Welcome to Soñamos, Through the Eyes of Immigrants, a podcast dedicated to highlighting the colorful, beautiful, joyful stories of who we are as a community here, and in particular as a community here in Lake County. This podcast is dedicated to all the beautiful immigrants and families that we have come across and that we will continue to come across. Today, I have the privilege and the honor of introducing an incredible woman who has an even more incredible story, Dr. Maria Gómez. I'm going to share a little bit about Dr. Maria Gómez before we get started because I need to make sure that I give it justice with describing who she is. So our guest is someone whose journey reflects what is possible when determination meets opportunity. Her story is one of perseverance, leadership, and service, a reminder that immigrants are not defined by where they began, but by the lives that they have touched and the communities that they help build. Today, it is truly an honor to welcome Dr. Maria Gómez. Dr. Maria Gómez is a board-certified emergency medicine physician, educator, and proud immigrant. She was born in Guadalajara, Mexico. She comes from a family with a long tradition of healing. Her father is indigenous, and her grandfather was a respected healer who believed that every generation is called to heal, a legacy that continues to inspire her work today. After immigrating to the United States, Dr. Gómez's path to medicine was anything but traditional, and we will hear about that today. She experienced poverty, homelessness, barriers related to her immigration status, and countless moments when others doubted her potential. She earned her GED, attended community college while working multiple jobs, served as a combat medic in the U.S. Army following the events of September 11th, and became a U.S. citizen while deployed to Baghdad before ultimately achieving her lifelong dream of becoming a physician. Today, Dr. Gómez serves as an emergency medicine physician, tactical medicine physician, and medical educator, where she is passionate about mentoring future physicians and advocating for students from immigrant and underserved communities. She believes that our stories are not obstacles to overcome. They are the very experiences that allow us to serve others with empathy, courage, and purpose. Through her work and her story, Dr. Gómez hopes to inspire others to dream beyond the limits others place on them and recognize that where you begin does not determine where you go. So, welcome to Soñamos, Dr. Gómez.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
So the first part of our conversation is your story. And it's interesting, like right now I feel chills just describing who you are as a person, what you've overcome to be where you are. And that you're so humble sitting here next to me, willing to share your story in a space where we hope to shift that narrative and that thought process about who we are as people, that we're shifting the narrative from headlines to this is in reality who we are. And so the first part of our interview is learning a little bit about who you are as a human being. So I want to begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about little Maria. Tell us where we know you were born in Guadalajara, but what do you remember about coming to the United States, those early years, why your family decided to make this move?
Yes, so my father is from Guadalajara, Jalisco. He's indigenous, and my family's been on that land for years. He actually still resides there present day. And it is a rancho. In English, the terminology would be similar to farmland.
Farmland.
Right? And so it supports, it's created to support multiple families, and it has like a centralized well and area for livestock and whatnot. And unfortunately, it's a very poor region as well, right? It doesn't have a lot of resources, and the concept was that one of his brothers had reached out, had crossed the border and started work, and he's like, hey, you can get regular pay out here. You don't have to just work the land. And that's the idea. You work the land, you have your livestock, you eat what you grow, and you, if you have any meat, it's from the source that you bred. And so my family thought, my parents' idea was, let's go over and let's get regular income, regular resources. And that's how it started. Now, it didn't end up that way. He's back in Mexico, back on the same land. He has this tie. He has this indigenous tie to wanting to eat only what he grows, wanting to, if there's meat, there's an entire celebration in, what that animal is giving you. And there's a whole process to it, right? So the idea was move somewhere where there's more resources. And I remember, we have pictures in this like brick abode form, and I actually spent a summer living out there, and it's hard work. It is incredibly hard work. I lasted literally only one summer.
When you went back?
When I went back, yes. But as a child, I do remember, and it was the ranch in and of itself that actually built my dream to become a physician. My father had cut himself on barbed wire.
Okay.
And unfortunately, where we live in the mountainous region, there weren't resources. The hospital, the city itself is 2 hours away in bus ride, or an hour away in bus ride. But you have to go and make your way to the actual street, which you have to walk to the street. And I remember him getting, it was like a raggedy towel. He's like, okay, we're going to go to the hospital. And we're standing there, and it's like dripping. And he's like,
oh my gosh.
He's more annoyed that he has to miss whatever it is that he's doing. And we get on the bus, and I see people checking in on him. And I'm like, like, that's strange. And then I don't remember how he got off the bus. I don't know if at that point, like, was he conscious? I don't remember. But I remember sitting in the hospital and waiting. And the doctor came out, and he's like, your dad's in here. He's going to be okay. Are you hungry? And I'm like, yeah. I'm not going to say no to food. And then I don't know how long after he finally came out, and he's like, Mija, he's like, this man helped me. He saved my life. And I looked, and I knew that second. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm like, that's it.
How old were you?
Done. I was tiny. It was before I was 7.
Oh, wow.
And I just remember and I remember sitting there waiting for the bus. I'm like, and it's still the same bus.
Oh, wow.
That still goes down to the city, and you still have to wait on the same side of the road. And I'm just like, can't they, like, all these years? Yes. But I remember, I knew that instant, and I remember telling my grandfather, I'm like, it's me, Grandpa. I'm like, it's me. I'm gonna be the healer. And he's like, okay. He's like, all right, let's pay attention then.
He probably knew it.
Yeah, I think he did. And I think my father did as well.
So how old were you when you came to the U.S.?
So I was...
And it was you? Do you have brothers, sisters?
No, it was my brother and my sister, and I'm the youngest. And we originally came to Oregon. Newberg, Oregon is where we originally came to. And I want to say I was 6 or 7. And I didn't speak any English at the time, and it was a really difficult transition. I remember my sister kicking and pulling me to go to school, and I just did not want to go because I couldn't speak the language.
Yeah.
And, also there wasn't a large minority population, so it was like constant just making fun of, like, why is your hair like that? Why do you look like that? And I just didn't like it. Yeah. Initially, I didn't like school. Eventually, I grew to like it. But at that
Clearly.
moment... at that moment, I was not a fan.
Oh, wow. And then you shared that you were previously undocumented. Tell me what that experience was like as a child. And when did you realize that you were undocumented? And what did that mean?
I did not know it for a long time. I did not understand the things that my parents were doing. I just thought it was part of life, And I remember my parents picking up extra shifts. My mother was a factory worker, and my father was a construction worker. And they would pick up extra shifts, and they'd tell my older sister, okay, well, you're going to cook the meals, you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. And a lot of it was for payments to get paperwork done. And I remember one time my mother had given thousands of dollars to someone, and they didn't help her.
Oh.
And she's like, oh, my gosh.
Still in Oregon where you were?
No, this was in North Chicago.
No, you guys had emigrated to
We had emigrated. And something happened in Oregon as well, where there was issue where my father was receiving kind of like little letters and his car work, because he would do a lot of mechanic work. That was pretty much telling us to get out of the neighborhood, right? Because there was this huge migration coming into that area. And the apartment building that we were at, or the one connected to it, ended up burning down, and that's how we ended up moving. And my father's like, this is going to escalate. He's like, pretty much, we're not safe here. Let's go somewhere else. And at that point, his brother, my uncle that had originally gone there, had already moved and found factory work in Waukegan.
Okay.
So that's how we ended up in North Chicago. But I do remember, it would be a day trip where we would go downtown immigration and just stand in line with everyone else and wait. And I remember my mom crying because somebody had taken all this money and they had done all this extra work, and the paperwork was never processed. So I knew, I was very well aware that there was something that we had to do and something that they had to save money for to try to get this ball rolling to become, at that time it was just residency that we were applying for.
Right.
And they kept, it's a green card, it's a green card. The green card they kept mentioning, just like, can't we just get it? Why do I have to wait in line in this building? Why do we have to take these trips? And so I understood something, but I didn't understand the importance of it and the relevance of it in my life at the time because I was just little.
Yeah. And so looking back, what sacrifices did your parents make that you really appreciate now?
Well, all of them. Everything. Ultimately, everything that I've ever succeeded in, honestly, has been because somebody has given me that route or that push or that leeway. My parents getting up and leaving and not knowing what they're coming to is so frightful, right? Neither one of them knew the language. And, I remember them urging me to learn the language, like, Mia, you have to learn this so that you can help us. Right?
Yes.
And I remember my sister, she was the oldest, so she would pick it up, and there you go, official translator.
Yeah, and official everything, right? And that's we become the adult in the household for our families who sadly don't speak the language. Mm-hmm. So moving on to the next part of our interview here, I always feel, or I've always said, you need to find your purpose. When you find your purpose, you know your why, and you understand why you do the work that you do and why you move the way that you move. So you shared that when you were with your father in the hospital, you realized you wanted to be a doctor. And so I love that you have that background of healing. You come from generations of healers. And I don't know why every time I say that I get chills. And so what was that one defining moment where you're now in this country, you now have command of the language, and you decide you want to become a doctor? When was that? What triggered that?
I think I knew I wanted to be a healer when I was a young child, and my grandfather would take me with him, and he was a sober. I don't know how it translates in English, like an herbist and
Guerrero.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he would do these things, and I didn't understand him
healer.
at the time. So in the land that they live, they would pack wounds with soil, and in my mind, right, and I'm just a young kid, and I'm like, why would you put dirt in someone's wounds? I didn't understand until way later on that it had embedded minerals in it, and a lot of the burn cream that we use has that same mineral.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm a child, and I was like, now thinking back, and I'm like, I'm trying to keep track of everything that he told me, and it all makes sense now that I have the knowledge and the background, but this was years and years of trial and error and knowledge from just these indigenous roots, and I've just now gained this new respect for it. But I knew that I wasn't going to be a definitive type of healer in the sense that my grandfather was. I knew that I wanted to be a physician. The issue was that no one in my family had ever gone to higher education. So that route was just like, I want to do it, but it's like, how?
But you don't know how.
I had no idea. No idea. The process in and of itself was kind of figure it out.
So when I was reading your bio, you went from a GED to a doctor.
Yes.
And so what obstacles did you have to overcome to get to? And you completed your GED. You didn't complete your high school. You went and got a GED. And then from there, what motivated you to continue?
So it was a challenge because I remember in high school, or in it used to be at school. It used to be Novak King and Neil, and I don't know if they still exist in North Chicago. But I remember doing very well academically, and then my parents split, and the issue was my mother had become accustomed to the lifestyle, the American lifestyle, and my father just wouldn't give. For him, it was not healthy, and he needed to be more rooted in natural nature in and of itself. And so they became disgruntled, they separated, and it was devastating for me. And I ended up acting out because of it, because I truly thought it was my fault. And at that point, I started, instead of doing very well academically in school, I started doing very poorly.
Oh, wow.
And I remember scoring high in an exam, and the counselor told me, he's like, and I asked, why am I not in the advanced classes? And he's like, Maria, Marias they don't go to college.
Marias don't go to college.
And he just was very blunt about it. And he's like, Marias end up having families. We're going to put you in the family planning course instead. Although I had scored at that time very high. And so I would see the students going to their, pre-calculus, whatnot. And I'm just like, I should be in that class. That was me. And then I ended up in a course about family planning. And at that time, I wasn't engaging in that. I wasn't thinking about family planning. And a lot of it was how to obtain government support. And at that time, I still wasn't a resident, so my family could not get,
access to any of
food
these
stamps and all these things. And I was just like, no one knows anything about this in my family. When I come and talk about it, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You can't get that. And that's where I would spend, and that made me act out even more. So I ended up literally on 10th Street. Behind, at that time, it was a Gonzalez Mart. I was acting out at home. My mom said no, and similar to what she said to my father. He came home, bags are right there, you got to go. And it was the same thing. And at that time, I'm aging myself. The cell phones weren't a thing, right? So I would go behind there, and the guy was nice enough in the deli, and he would give me the food that they were going to, throw out. And he told me, he was so kind. He's like, Mia, you're young. He's like, there are people out here that would do horrible things to you. He's like, you have to find your family. He's like, you have to find them, and you have to get out of here. He's like, you cannot stay in the street. And I, of course, had no way to communicate to my family. And eventually, one of my cousins was literally just driving around looking for me and found me. And my aunt told me, I'm going back to your dad's. And I spent the summer out there. It did not work.
And that's where you were like, this is not...
This is hard.
Yeah.
This is hard. You have to wake up before dawn, feed the animals, do this. And my dad was like, well, Mija, he's like, you can stay out here. Or he's like, or you can do what you're destined to do. He's like, so go. He's like, do that.
So you left undocumented.
I did.
And then how old were you?
I did. So I was 17 at the time, and we had been working on the process of getting the green card, getting the green card. And I stayed out there for a year. I ended up in the city with my family that lives in the city. And they're like, well, what skills do you have? And I was like, I don't have any skills. I'm like, I speak English, though. And they're like, okay. So I started reaching out to some of the colleges, and they said, hey, you can be an English teacher for us, and we'll give you classes. And so that's how I ended up getting some college education. And I ended up living with my grandparents, and my grandfather, again, he's like, you need to move forward with your path. He's like, you can be an educator, that's great. He's like, but you're missing something. And I was like, I am. I'm like, I don't know how to get there. And my sister reached out to me. She's like, you got your green card. She's like, you're coming back. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do when I get back there? She's like, oh, you're going to go to school and you're going to get a job. She's
so
like,
then you were able to get the green card
and come back.
Okay.
And literally, she's like, get a job. You know. And I was like, okay. And I started at a community college, and that's how I got my GED. And I did really well academically. And by the time I got to the point where I was finishing, I was like honors, all these things. I was working at McDonald's and 7-Eleven. And then I realized, I'm like, this isn't going to pay university tuition. And I was kind of at a halt. And my counselor at the time was like, well, you want to be a doctor, you have to go to college. You have to go to the university. They're like, apply to these scholarships. You'll do great. Yeah. And I'm applying, and I realized, like, yeah, I'm a great candidate. I could do this. And there's a little fine print. It says you have to be a citizen to receive this award. And my counselor is like, I don't know what to tell you. And I was like, well, make me citizen. Like, that's not how that works.
That's not how it works.
That's not how that works. And at this point, I was living with my sister. My mother ended up having a massive stroke. Oh. And she ended up partially blind. So we had already come to terms with resolving our past issues, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do. I was like, I don't have this money. I can't get this financial support.
And you weren't ready for a citizenship because there's a process.
Right,
You have
it's
to wait
years. Yeah, exactly. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know, I was just telling someone, like, make it happen. They're like, oh, it's not that easy.
Right.
I saw a recruiter on campus, and I was like, hey, you guys pay for college? And this is before 9/11. And they're like, yeah, we do. And they're like, but we don't know if we want you.
Okay.
So the citizenship, again, becomes an issue. And they're like, you come in and take this test, and we'll let you know. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, I felt academically strong. And I was like, okay, I'll come in and take the test. Day after the test, they're calling me, and they're like, hey, what do you want to do? Come on, let's sign up. And I was just like, oh, okay. I was like, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. And they're like, okay. And I was just like, I can do it? And they're like, yep, you're in. And I was like, oh, actually, that's not true. I had this tattoo over my hand.
Okay.
And I had to go to someone to speak about it. Mind you, this is before 9/11. So wartime, it fluctuates what they'll let pass at certain points, right? If they don't need a lot of staff, they don't need to build up their troop support, the rules are really strict. And at this time, the rules were really strict. They're like, about that tattoo, you know. And I told them, I'm like, it's a world peace sign. I'm like, this is what I would want. When I introduce myself and shake hands with someone, I want them to know me up front, right?
Yeah,
this is me putting myself out there. And they're like, And so the general, you know, sat down, talked to me about it. He's like, you know what? Okay. All right. Let's let her in.
We'll let you
so
in.
I had to have a signature permission. And that's how it started. And then 9/11 happened. And then...
How long had you been in the military when 9/11 happened?
It was my first year.
Oh, my goodness.
It was my first year, and I was in college.
Were you deployed?
I ended up deployed multiple times. So the first one was Guantanamo, and then the second one was really where the citizenship moved. When I joined the military, you know, and going in between college and my first deployment, I heard from other soldiers that if you don't do well, they can pull the support that they gave you for college, and you won't get your citizenship because at that time it wasn't guaranteed. And I would meet people as well that weren't residents, and I was like, how is this happening? Like, there's nothing. They're like, if we see potential in you, we'll let you in. You can go to war with us, absolutely.
Whether you have status or not.
Or whether you have status or not, which a lot of people are not aware of. You don't have to be a citizen to serve in the army or in the military at all. They will absolutely, and especially when there's a need, right? So there was a lot of people I was meeting from other countries with different backgrounds that spoke Spanish, and I was just like, oh, like you have, interesting. And I was just like, well, yeah, me too, I'm not a citizen. And it wasn't until the war was well en route that they decided if you die in combat, we'll grant you your citizenship, so your funeral will get paid. And
if you die in combat, then you're worthy of becoming a citizen.
And that was back in 2004-5. And then it wasn't eventually until almost the height towards the end of the war what they eventually stated, okay, well, if you serve so much time in combat and whatnot, that they would grant you, they would move forward with it. But my second deployment, they told me that I was going to be in Baghdad and that I needed top security clearance for the job. And I said, okay. And they're like, but we can't give it to you. And I was like, oh, great. I'm like, then keep me home, you know, because I'm elbow deep in my studies. I'm doing great academically. I'm still working full time and going to college, but I'm balancing out. I had little 4x4s that I would go in between, like flipping burgers, and I'd look. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get straight A's. I'm like, I don't care. I found a way. I would draw in the grease with the equations where I'm like, I had ways. I'm like, I'm going to do phenomenal. And in the military, I feared that they might not pay for my college because I heard from some of the other troopers that could happen. And so what I decided is, like, every school that the military sends me to, I'm going to finish top graduate, everything. So boot camp, AIS, it's a specialty training school that they send you to, physical fitness. I said, don't count me in the women portion. I'm going to count me in the men portion because I don't want there to be any doubts that I'm the best,
that you're capable,
that I'm in the top, right? So I would go out and I'd train with, you know, it was mostly men anyways, but I would train with their top. And I'm like, I'm going to beat you. And so every accolade I could get, I received. But then I ended up being elected for this deployment that required
Citizenship.
top secret. And
okay.
and I was just like, well, I'm like, I've been trying for years to get this citizenship. And they said, oh, no, you were chosen for a reason. So let us run this by the general and see what happens. And literally the next day, they're like, I hope you're ready for your questions, and you're going to get interviewed from someone by Rome. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't taken U.S. history. I'm like, what questions are they going to ask me? I'm like, I don't know. And I'm trying to find a book, and like, oh, what if I don't answer them correctly? And I'm thinking of my mom all the time. She was crying, because somebody took her money. I was like, if I don't answer this right. And at that time, I had this academic mindset where I'm like, I need time to study. And now you're telling me it's tomorrow. So the questions ended up being simple. And it was literally like the general snapped his fingers.
And
there
you were
I
a
was.
citizen.
And even more interestingly, I ended up speaking with him. And he told me, he's like, I saw your file. He's like, I saw your file. And he's like, and so my parents were immigrants. And he's like, it's so important to me that you move forward. And he's like, we're going to have a ceremony for your citizenship, and I want everyone, the entire team, to be there. And it happened to be General Petraeus, I was the medic for.
Wow.
And so he said, we're going to have a celebration. And at that moment, the celebration was in Saddam Hussein's mother's house. And so he had a chef come out, he bring this cake, and he spoke so eloquently about immigrants and the path to success that his parents had, the opportunities that they had lent him, and where he stood. And he's like, and you, for me, represent that next generation, and you will continue this line of work. And so they gave me this cute little cake with 4th of July, and that ceremony that year was held in the huge center in Baghdad, and John McCain went and gave us our flags. And this, years ago, 2007, and they spoke so eloquently the entire time. The whole area was filled with troopers that were actively in combat, elbow deep in the war, and none of them had their citizenship.
Oh my
yes,
goodness.
and it was just a huge celebration of, look at the service that these young men and women are doing, the sacrifice, right?
The sacrifice, yes.
Sadly, some of them did not come home, right? And it was led by literally the 4-star general at the time that came from an immigrant family. And I was incredibly grateful. It's a beautiful picture. My mom has it up, which is, now in retrospect with the history and the background of events that happened subsequently, I'm like, Mom, you put that down? She's like, no.
It's her
She's
pride.
She's like, this is the day you got your citizenship, and I understand. She sacrificed so much and she worked so hard. And she's like, that's the picture I want up. But, my hair is tied back. I have this horrible tan from the sun out there is
brutal.
Unforgiving. But he also had reached out, and he told me, he's like, there was a situation in which he had to come back to Washington and testify to Congress. And we had finished, he would go out and he'd run all these miles. And he expected us always to be next to him. And I was, running. And I approached him, I told him, I don't want to go to Washington. I'm like, I want to work in the ER. And he's like, yeah. He's like, okay. And I was like, at that time I was volunteering my time to work in a women's and children's clinic in the remote area in Baghdad. And we would see, it was general health, and I told him I want more exposure to medicine, and I know that there's trauma, and I know that their ER is very busy. He's like, okay. He's like, that's what you want? And I was like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, can you make that happen instead? And he's just like, yeah. He's like, okay. And I spent that time in the ER, and I really, at that moment, knew that I had to move forward. I had to figure out how to become a physician, because at this time I hadn't finished college. I still didn't have a bachelor's degree. And, seeing the devastation of war, the brutality, the real sheer, smelling it, seeing the soldiers that gave their life, the children, that came in without part of their skull. It was so devastating. And I was like, I cannot not do this. and it was also a plethora of information because there was a lot of physicians there. I'm like, how do I do this? What do I do? What are my next steps? And it helped me in numerous ways. It helped me grow as a provider, as a person, and a lot more spiritually as well.
Truly a calling. Truly, defining your purpose and then being in the trenches and witnessing, and that your hands could support the healing process. And so right now, in the work that you do as Dr. Gómez, not even Maria, let's just call you Dr. Gómez, you're serving patients during their most difficult time in the ER. And what have you experienced being a Latina, previously undocumented immigrant? What does that feel like when you're in the emergency room right now serving all kinds of people?
So I think I purposely chose where I wanted to go for residency because it served the underserved. And I knew that was what I wanted, who I wanted to affect, and what I wanted to learn from. And where I'm at right now, it's challenging. It is really challenging as an educator, as a physician. There's always this background noise, and sometimes it comes to the forefront. I've had patients just generally ask me. I had a patient that came in, and he's like, "Where are you from?" And I told him, "I'm from Chicago." He's like, "Where are you really from?" I said, "I'm from Mexico." He's like, "How did you get here?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "Are you illegal?" And I just look at him, and I was like, "Well, you see these hands?" And I told the students this story. I'm like, "I dug a hole all the way from Mexico right underneath this hospital." And he's like, "Come on." And I was like, "Sir, you ask silly questions. You're going to get silly answers, right?" And I have to redirect them. Let's talk about how I can help you. How about you see me as a physician and not this idea that you have that I should be, or I should, I'm like, let me help you. Let me help you, because hopefully that will evolve your mentality of who
And
you
understanding,
think I am, right?
Yeah.
And who you think my people are, right? I'm like, let me help you. And I've had interactions like that with students as well, where I just recently had someone that had the World Cup on, and I asked him, I'm like, "Oh, are you a fan of football?" He looks at me, he's like, "Football?" He's like, "Oh, your last name is Gómez." He's like, "Well..."
And your first name is Maria.
He's like, "Well, what should I call you?" And I had already gone through the process of introducing myself. I always tell the patient what the steps are, what to expect, what you're going to feel next, so they don't get caught off guard. So I was confused. I'm like, I've already introduced myself. We've talked about the procedure. I'm like finishing the procedure. And I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, I don't see color." He's like, "But." And then I was like, oh, here comes the but.
He didn't see color as it meant like, I don't see race, I see people. But I'm curious,
are you Hispanic? Are you Latino? Or should I call you illegal? My neighbor's illegal, and he's a good guy. He's all right. And I said, oh. He's like, "So what should I call you?" And I said, "Sir, you should call me the name listed on that board, Dr. Gómez." Like, that's what I respond to. He's like, "Okay."
You stay so calm and collected. I have gotten to the point where when I hear people define me or my immigrant community as illegal, it just makes me so angry, because human beings are not illegal, let alone aliens. And so when I hear the word and how they're defining us as illegal aliens, it just actually, no, we're human beings. And I always say during these podcasts or during these conversations that there is only one race, and it is the human race.
That's right.
And so the constant reminder of that we shouldn't be labeled by what the headlines say, but look at us as humans. And now your healing hands are helping all people, regardless of who they are or what they look like.
Absolutely.
And so you share with your student, if they knew your whole story, your whole journey, would they look at you differently?
Right. And the hopes is, the hope is and will always be to always provide that healing nature, but also, inform you that that's not exactly illegal.
Yes.
Is not a thing.
Right.
It even adds on to it, especially since my family's been on this land for century, right before the Spaniards came, and they're still there, right? That my father is embedded. He puts his fingers into the earth,
which is the land,
and like prays to the soil. And I'm just like, he has this innate tie. And so to say that I don't belong here for some reason is also just, it's right to the heart. Like, let's not do that. Let's not do that. And I'm going to give you still the most amazing care. You're going to think twice when you come out here and be like, wow, that was the best physician I ever had. And that's how I hope to also affect the students, right? And tell them, you know what, this is going to be what you might be up against, but guess what? There's a way to move forward, and there's a way to show your light.
You know, your story challenges assumptions that people have about who we are as immigrants, who we are as a people. And so why do you think this storytelling is important? Why do you think that it's important that you share your journey, that we're here doing this podcast, and that hopefully whoever is listening or seeing this will understand that this journey, this story is worth saying and worth telling? And, you know, is it fearful to come out and share all your vulnerabilities? You are a dean in a university teaching medical students, and you're still in the military. You're a mom. You're all of these things. And so why is it important that your story is told in spaces like this?
Yes. So one, the storytelling, I think, is absolutely important so that people understand that, you can't just bottle a whole people into this stereotype, right?
One stereotype.
That's not how it works. And to enlighten everyone about our culture, the beauty of it, the giving nature, right? The movement forward that we embed into each other and for everyone. Yeah. So I'm assistant dean, and I'm not in the military anymore, but I do hope that as I move along with my career, that if I tell someone my story, or if there's someone out there that's ever been told, hey, you don't belong in that area, we're going to divert you to this, or hey, you can't do this for whatever reason, that those are roadblocks. They don't define you as a person, right? If you have a destiny, if you have this passion inside of you, there'll be ways around it. Don't lose sight of that. The same way that my family supported me and other people, a lot of people supported me and said, hey, listen, you might have to build your own way. You might have to find that road, but it's there, right? I'm very hopeful that it moves someone in a way that they say, yeah, you know what? I am going to do that. I'm going to move forward with that. And I also hope that it enlightens our community to see that, what we might be portrayed as in larger media is not the truth, right? Yeah. We are giving, we are helpful, we want to see our entire community rise.
So in the climate that we are in right now, that what gives you hope? What final message do you want to share with our listeners? As you are engaging with students, what gives you hope and diminishes that fear for our immigrant families?
So when I hear our youth speak, that gives me so much hope. And then when I see and meet people, like every single person I've met here today, it gives me so much hope, because it reminds me that there's still so many good people out there that want to make things right. They're just generally, truly good people. And there's so many still out there. And although you see these horrible things, there's still someone fighting that good fight. And I hear the youth, and I hear that embedded, that voice in them. And it makes me want to move forward. And in all the darkness that you hear in the news, there's still hope.
What's the final message you'd like to share with our listeners? We have 1 minute, but what's the final message you'd like to share?
I think the final message is that a lot of our youth are seeds, and they need that water to grow, and that water comes from the community. And we just have to stay strong and support each other through the hard times and the good times. Yeah,
thank you so much, Dr. Gómez, for sharing your story with us, for your trust, and for being a part of Soñamos. To everyone listening, thank you for joining. We hope that today's conversation leaves you inspired, that it challenges assumptions, and that it reminds you that incredible beauty and strength and possibility that immigrants bring to this country every day is what we need to strive for every day. Stay tuned for more stories like this to come, and thank you again for joining Soñamos through the eyes of immigrants.